Hello, everyone. I'm attorney Justin Lovely, and I'm here for another episode of the Carolina Justice Report. We're going to change things up a little bit and talk about some current events that are happening here in South Carolina and more importantly down in the Lowcountry. And I'm sure everybody's it's been out in the news. It's kind of some crazy stuff. I'm not too up to speed, but my wife and law partner, Amy Lawrence, and associate Sarah Austin, they've kind of really been keeping up with it. And that's the Murdaugh murders and the whole shebang going down in the Lowcountry. So, Amy, what's going on? Just give us a top line assessment of where we're at so far, and maybe we can add some insight for our viewers.
Well, first, let's get everything straight. How you pronounce these names? It's spelled Murdaugh, but you pronounce it Murdaugh, like Murdock, even though it's Murdaugh. So we pronounce it Murdaugh, and it all kind of starts with Alec Murdaugh is an attorney in Hampton County, South Carolina, which is about an hour outside of Charleston. And he has two sons, a wife named Maggie and two sons named Paul and Buster. And
I think it's important that comes from a long line of attorneys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down in Hampton County. They're kind of
solicitors.
Solicitors. So they're just a very well-known, sort of powerful family.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I thought it was really weird when I read that Alec, who was in private practice, carried a solicitor's badge and was just a special prosecutor who never really special prosecuted anything, which I thought was really rare.
That's just some crazy, only happens in TV counties.
That just doesn't happen badges to anybody.
Yeah. And so what piqued my interest, though, was the boating accident. I guess that started the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I heard about that even before the murders. And I think just as personal injury attorneys, you hear about boating accident and drunk boat drivers.
What year was that? 2019?
I think something like that. I think 2019.
So that was a couple years ago. His youngest son, was riding through the creeks in Beaufort County, right?
Yeah, I think it was Beaufort County. And
right outside of Pierce Island, yeah.
A commercial boat or a boat owned by somebody very important. And you just don't hear of very important people doing these kinds of things or causing these kinds of accidents. So I think it was big news and it was a big deal when it happened and continues to be even more so now.
Yeah.
Well, it was a big deal because there was a death.
Yeah.
So essentially what happens is Paul Murdaugh is 19 years old at the time. He's 19 years old. He's on a boat that's owned by his father or a business of his father's. And it was a hunting business. There's a commercial insurance policy that covers that boat. And he gets on this boat. It's like a little 17-foot boat. With his friends and their girlfriends and his girlfriend. And they go and they're drinking and they go on this boat with no lights over to an oyster roast.
Yeah, somebody's house
and do an oyster roast. And then they leave there. Well, first he buys alcohol at a gas station with a fake ID. And then they go to this oyster roast. And then after the oyster roast, he insists that he wants to go to this bar. And he does a shot or two and then he gets back on the boat. And he's drunk. His alcohol content is through the roof, and he gets into a fight and an argument, and he takes off on that boat with no lights on, and out of anger. And he's going, I think they said estimated 30 miles per hour, and that's going really fast when you've got 8 kids in a boat on a 17-foot boat
in the creek.
In the creek with no lights on,
and they crash
at night, and they crash. And when they crash, 2 people are severely injured. And one young lady dies. Her name's Mallory Beach. And she was beautiful. And everybody said she was really kind. As a matter of fact, as a mom, it breaks my heart that a parent had to bury their kid. And everything that ensues after that is just kind of pure chaos. So Paul Murdaugh was not initially charged with the BUI. Matter of fact, when you listen to the dash cams and car cam videos and all that stuff associated with the boating accident and the 911 calls and the depositions that go along with that, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to. I think I was listening to Mandy Matney's podcast a while ago.
Shout out to Mandy Matney.
When she started it up. Yeah, and it's kind of hard to listen to. I think I had to skip through, honestly. I just fast forward through a couple of the crying 911 calls because it's hard to listen to. And I just think right then is when I think people really started questioning the power of the Murdaugh family, because it was now someone died and nothing has happened to Paul.
Right.
And what's going to happen to these people and these families? And then it just got even crazier after that. Took a turn that I never
He eventually does get charged with felony DUI with great bodily injury and death. And I think he's looking at 25 years. And what's kind of crazy, and I do criminal defense, so we do criminal defense, so we really understand like the process of, bookings and bond hearings and all these other things. And he's never booked into the jail. Matter of fact, when people requested his mugshot, someone took an iPhone picture of him, just snapped a picture of him that was supposed to be his mugshot. He was never dressed out. He never had to go to the jail. He never had to turn himself in or any of that stuff. And then he goes to, he gets put on a bond with the monitor, and he's not allowed to leave like the county, a couple counties around him. And then that bond gets removed. No, there was no alcohol monitor ever put on him, which I thought was odd. And because that's just standard
eventually his
procedure.
ankle monitor gets removed, and he can sort of go wherever
he can go
wants
anywhere
to.
he wants. They take all those requirements off of him pretty quickly.
So in the meantime, the injured boaters and the deceased, they bring a lawsuit.
They bring a lawsuit because,
In
from what I
civil court.
understand, there's a multi-million-dollar insurance policy on that boat, and that multi-million-dollar insurance policy that company is denying coverage because it was not being used in the commercial manner that they were insuring it for, and so that's an issue. So they've got dram shops on the gas station. I think they figured out the homeowners are not liable, but I'm not sure about that. And then also the restaurant and the gas station is what they've hit up on the.
Okay, so that's ongoing litigation that's
Ongoing
happening
litigation.
right now.
Right now.
So with that being said, the pressure's on, and then a few months ago, we had another crazy twist, right?
Yeah, Paul Murdaugh.
So the guy who was driving the boat and his mom,
His
right?
mom were murdered. They were found murdered. And they were found by Alec Murdaugh, the father and husband of Maggie and Paul. And they were shot and killed outside their home, which was, they called it Moselle, and it was it's a hunting lodge, which a ton of our friends who were attorneys and judges and stuff have all been there and hunted there. And these are people that are well known in the legal community. And it's a well known place in the legal community where people go and hunt. And so they're found murdered, shot with 2 different guns, one being owned by the Murdaugh's family, registered to them. And Alec comes home and finds them dead and calls 911.
And nobody's been charged.
Nobody's been charged, and no one really can tell if it's related to the boating accident. Now they're talking about other people in the Murdaugh family's life that have been killed or mysteriously die, and sort of all that has been brought up. The criminal charges against Paul obviously were dropped because he died.
Right.
I think that throws a wrench into the civil action on their side because he's like number one witness.
Right.
So everything is just sort of super chaotic.
And when you said it brings up this whole thing, like there's too many dead bodies that come back to this family. And one of those is his housekeeper, and I can't remember her name, and I want to apologize for that because she's important. And one of the things we've learned about this is that their housekeeper died on their property. And a lawsuit was brought, and
Because the heirs have not received any money from that. This was years ago, right?
Yeah.
years ago. And what's really weird is, so this lawsuit's brought, it settles, and the children of this woman never knew of a lawsuit, never knew of a settlement, a multi-million-dollar settlement.
Right, she died.
Because she passed away, and they had, a big liability insurance on their home. And there's nothing that anybody really knows about what happened to this woman or where the money went. Then we have a young man named Stephen Smith, whose body was found in the middle of a road, and no one knows what happened to him at all. And I think it's kind of crazy because they're brought into Highway Patrol because they thought that it was a hit and run, but there's no evidence of a hit and run. And no one wants to investigate it as a murder except the Highway Patrol because there's not one piece of evidence that would make you think that this was a hit and run.
Right, and the Highway Patrol is not equipped to investigate murders. They just do highway investigations,
Right.
So accidents and traffic, things like that. And so
how do they tie that back to the murder?
a couple of the Highway Patrol were interviewing witnesses, and a couple of the witnesses brought up Buster Murdaugh.
The oldest son.
The oldest son being linked to Stephen Smith. Some of them, I think, said they saw the Murdaugh's car.
And that's the case they just reopened, right?
They just reopened that case because the Highway Patrol is like talking about Buster Murdaugh. But for me, when I listen to the podcast and I read about it, it sounds like they brought it up and sort of it just was never followed up. Like, was it a link or not?
But his name came up with too many times in interviews that he was responsible. He and 2 other people.
And I think I don't know if the FBI reopened it or someone did in there.
SLED.
I guess their plan is to follow up on all those things that they never did.
And SLED says they've reopened this case because of some kind of evidence found at the crime scene at Moselle that would lead them to reopen this case.
Oh.
So, the crazy web
what started as a drunk boating accident turned into
a double homicide,
multiple deaths, possibly murders connected to this one family.
Okay. So Alec was booked on a different issue.
Well, we also found it kind of weird that he was at the trial lawyers conference down in Hilton Head. Matter of fact, Sarah saw him and Buster, which was kind of unusual for a couple months. It hasn't been that long because when did they die? In June?
Yeah, they died in June.
And then the 1st of August, they're schmoozing and hanging out at a lawyer conference.
Yes, they were just, I think they were just seen out publicly together, Buster and Alec.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, Alec gets shot in a very interesting story that didn't make sense the minute I read it.
And so what he says is that he's changing his tire on the side of the road, and there's a drive-by shooting, and he gets grazed. And one of the things we learn immediately is that before the police even get there, there's a helicopter there to airlift him out, to medevac him out to Savannah, a hospital in Savannah.
And this guy just drives,
he drives a brand new Mercedes.
He's not the kind of guy who would be changing his own flat tire on the side of a very rural, low traffic road.
Yeah, that man had never changed a tire in his life, 1. And 2, these were run flat tires that even if you had a flat tire, you could go 50 miles on them. It would not mess your rim up. It wouldn't mess your tire up. It would have been fine.
So first I'm like, why is he on the side of this rural road changing his own tire? That would never happen. And then he gets shot. Someone just drives by and shoots him. Like, that person would have to know where he was. It's not like this is a inner city, a lot of crime
this is in
area.
Chicago.
Yeah, this is just like the middle of nowhere, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Just to shoot him.
And he also says that he was on the way to Charleston, and this was not how you would drive to get to Charleston.
So the story did not add up,
No,
which apparently it didn't, because now he's arrested.
Well,
I don't know if he's...
Then we got news from SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is our SBI, our State Bureau of Investigation, that there was a knife found that slit the tire of Alec Murdaugh's car, and it belonged to Alec Murdaugh. And he's the one who slit his own tire, essentially, is what they insinuated.
Yeah.
And then we later find out that he has been jetted off to a rehab facility for opioid addiction.
His injuries were confusing because the first reports, I think, were like, he's shot in the head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, someone's hunting this family. And then you find out it was like a superficial wound to the head. And I'm like, if you're shot in the head, how can it be superficial? And then you think, is he in the trauma unit? And it's like, no, he's at rehab.
And you're like, wait, what?
None of that added up at all.
Right. So then all of a sudden he's at rehab. And then Dick Harpootlian gets involved, which is an attorney, a big fancy attorney out of South Carolina, out of Columbia. And then we have his family attorney, who we're hearing all these really conflicting things about. And then all of a sudden we get news that there's been a warrant issued. Well, first we get news that Curtis Smith, isn't that his name?
I think so.
Has been arrested
for
conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and assisted suicide. And the story that we hear is that Alec hired him to kill him. So his son, Buster, his remaining son, his surviving son, would have his $10 million life insurance policy to be able to go on and carry on.
Taking care of himself because he's sort of the last
Murdaugh in the family. Yeah.
Right.
And wasn't he also stealing money from his law firm?
Well, then we learned that there was also...
Just keeps getting better and better.
Which might have to do with the housekeeper. We're not sure.
Right. Then we hear that he has stolen millions of dollars from his law firm. And I have a feeling it has to do with his trust accounting, from his trust account. And that means all the money for your clients goes into that account. So we get a personal injury settlement. Let's say it's $100,000 that goes to our trust account. after everything clears, let's say everything being equal, $666,000 would go to the client, 33 to the whatever. He's taking money out of that pool, the client's money. He's not stealing from his partners, from what I understand. He's stealing from his clients.
Yeah. And then it's just so eerie because that's such a well-known law firm. I think
it's a very prestigious law firm.
If you go on their website, the day that news broke, their website was just like, error could not be found. Like, it was just like, whoa, this is big. Like, the whole thing is shut down. And it's just not him getting shot. It's like, I think that's when I realized it was a lot bigger than just, I don't know. The way this thing started as a drunk boating accident has unfolded as like some conspiracy.
Crazy.
So he's been booked. He's out on bail right now. He's allegedly back in.
This is what I find to be, it hurts, like as someone who does criminal defense, it hits me in the heart because we are constantly, I do bond hearings for people all the time, good people who made a bad choice in a moment. Whatever that is. And he gets a PR bond, a $20,000 PR bond, which means he paid nothing. He walked out of there on his own reconnaissance. And here's a guy who has all these issues. All these dead bodies are coming up around him. And he has unlimited resources.
Well, he was only charged with conspiracy, right? He's got a clean record. So what's a judge going to do?
Well, because he's a flight risk. Because in South Carolina...
Well, they took his passport, didn't they?
But he has private planes, like access to like millions of dollars. And so, I hate to say this, and I'm not trying to play the race card here, but I'm going to like pull this one out. I mean, if he'd been black, it'd been a whole different conversation, right? Or if he'd been poor, it'd been a whole different conversation. But here's a guy with all the resources, unlimited resources for anything that he wants, essentially. I mean, we're all learning this very quickly. And he's released on his own reconnaissance because the question is he a flight risk and is he a danger to society? Well, now we have 5 bodies around him. I don't know who's responsible for him, but I do know they're all tied to him. And he's admitted to drug use, and he's admitted to stealing millions of dollars, and he comes from one of the most powerful families in all of South Carolina. And he gets a PR bond.
It's not a coincidence, I don't think.
Right.
I think it's disappointing that, the things weren't done that should have been done when Paul got in trouble. And it's like, still, now we're finding out even worse things than a drunk boating accident, which resulted in someone's death. But now we're getting into intentional things, and they're still not being held accountable, this powerful family.
And we learned that, like,
who knows what's going to happen now? I mean, he just tried to kill himself a couple weeks ago. This story only gets crazier the longer he's...
Well, also, I think is really weird is that, like, it's only been a week and a half since he tried to kill himself, 2 weeks. Yeah. And, I mean, this head injury was so bad that they rushed him...
Helicopter.
By helicopter.
Superficial injury.
For this injury. And then when we see his mugshot, we see him in the courtroom... I don't see any blood. I don't see any stitches. I don't see any scars. I don't see any scabs. Anything that you would see that would be indicative of a head injury, we're not seeing it.
Well, he's definitely got a powerhouse legal defense team. And they're setting. All they gotta do is add Amy's rejected. They're setting the stage. They're setting the stage to build a defense. So whatever he's doing, they're laying the groundwork for sure.
It's a story that like you always hear that saying, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up, people.
No, I don't know if Netflix is already filming, or if not, someone should start, because it only gets crazier. Like, you think it's over, and you're like, wow, that's crazy. They were killed, and then all of a sudden, it's like, now he's being shot. What's going to happen next?
Yeah, and then while it all feels tied together, we were laying in bed the other night, and I said, or we were walking around the neighborhood because we listened to in the news or whatever, and as we're walking at night after we get our kids to bed, and I'm like, what if none of this has anything to do with the other? Like, what if it's just...
What if he was trying to fake his death? I wonder that.
Yeah.
Like, if that whole thing
or
was
this...
People with money can do that?
His wife and his son have died, and is this just what happens when life goes completely off the rails and you just don't know how to deal with it?
Yeah, he's mentally unwell, or is he mentally unwell, or is he so...
Because let me tell you something, if something happened to you and one of our babies, you'd have to bury me too, so I get how you could go completely crazy and nothing would ever make sense after that. You wouldn't make a rational choice, and you're after that, I get that totally. So I don't know.
Let's leave it and stop it right there. We're going to update our listeners and our viewers as this story keeps unfolding, because like the lady said, I think it's going to keep getting crazy and take more plot twists. What do you guys think happened? Like and comment and let us know. And if you got a topic you want us to talk about in regards to this case or any other legal issue, also let us know. Like us on social media. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, our website, and of course this podcast and video cast. This has been the Carolina Justice Report. Again, I'm attorney Justin Lovely, Amy Lawrence, Sarah Alston. We'll see you next time.
Life gets ugly, justice is